Money, right? It's the lifeblood of our society, right? Fuels our economies, affects our politics, we've seen this for sure, and influences our daily choices. So it's on our mind, we're always using it. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what is money? Like, what is it really? That's what we're going to dive in today, and how Bitcoin is the greatest money that there ever was. Okay? And so what I want to do is talk through two main things. What is money and what are the properties that make up the very best money? And we're going to go through those in detail. This will likely be a series, but we're going to start at the highest level of what money is, and we're going to dig in deeper, right? So what is it? At its core, money is a tool, right? It's a medium of exchange that allows two people to exchange goods or services. At the highest level, that's what it accomplishes. So if we were back in time, the way that the world operated to begin was the barter system, right? It worked, but it was inefficient and limited because you had to have two people that wanted to exchange similar goods. So if somebody wanted to have eggs, great, and somebody wanted to trade that for cattle, perfect. But what if somebody had eggs and they wanted leather, for example, and all they had were cattle? It's really hard to make that trade work, right? Because you have to have two people that want similar exact trades to happen. And money started as a barter system, and you can understand how that didn't quite work, right? So over time, what there is, the definition of money is there's a medium of exchange, like we just said, you can exchange goods and services. There's a store of value, which is it's a way to save money for the future without losing the value of that money over time. And then the last one is unit of account, is what everybody agrees is how we measure the price of something. In this instance, in this world, it's dollars, right? That's what it is today. Again, the limitations of the barter system requires a double coincidence of wants. I want something that you have, and you have to want something that I have. Doesn't always work that way, right? So that's how money emerged, is that it helped facilitate trade and economic growth, and allowed us to develop and become much more sophisticated societies by having a medium to exchange in, not just a barter system, right? And this barter system goes back 10,000 years. This isn't anything new. Money is not a new idea or concept. And we've tried as many different societies to figure out what the best form of money has been. And guess what? Some of those have worked and some of them have failed, but there are 7 properties to money that are most effective, okay? And so at a highest level, those 7 properties are durability, portability, divisibility, fungibility, verifiability, scarcity, and acceptability, okay? So I'll go through those at a high level, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare those to, let's say, gold, US dollar, and Bitcoin, and we're going to see which one wins in those categories, okay? Durability simply means, is it going to withstand wear and tear and weather? For example, apples usually aren't used for medium of exchange because they rot over a period of time, right? They're not that durable. Portability is important because back in the day, societies used Rhea stones as an example, these huge 1,000-ton stones. Well, if you wanted to buy something across the other side of the world, how are you going to transport it? Like it doesn't work, right? Divisibility is important as well, because let's say you have a block or a diamond, for example. How are you going to cut that to slice off a piece of the diamond to pay for a pack of gum? Doesn't really work, right? So it has to be divisible, because there's small purchases and there's large purchases and there's everything in between. The other one is fungibility, meaning each unit needs to be the same. And that's why there's dollar bills and there's certain coins. They're all the same. It's not, because otherwise there could be no unit of measure. Things would be worth different values. So they have to be the same, right? Verifiability is important. Gold, you can take it to go get tested. There's watermarks and there's those lines. You can look on the dollar bills as well. as examples. And we're going to tie this all back and compare them to Bitcoin, but I'm just going through at a high level here. And then scarcity has to have a limited supply. It's the reason that sand, for example, is not money, because you can just go out to a beach and get tons of sand. It doesn't cost you very much or energy or anything. It's just there, right? Or dirt. So those are, it has to be scarce for it to hold its value. And then it has to be acceptable, meaning widely accepted forms of payment. And we're going to get into how all that plays out over time, right? All right, so let's take a look at this when it comes to the really Bitcoin versus some of the other influences, right? So when we take a look at something like durability, there's a reason that gold has been historically the standard, is because it's one of the most, the strongest and one of the greatest metals, not because of the color, but because of its properties, is that it doesn't corrode easily, right? That's why like copper or something like that isn't used. When it comes to durability of Bitcoin, guess what? That is code on the internet. It's as durable as it gets. If there's a single computer in the entire world that is hooked up to the Bitcoin network, it still works and exists. So it's extremely, extremely durable. When it comes to portability, let's compare gold and Bitcoin again. Go and try and take $100 million worth of gold and move it across the world. Very challenging, right? Because what's going to happen is it weighs a ton. You're going to have a cost to transport it. You're going to have to get armored tanks to protect it because you don't want it to get robbed or stolen. Very challenging. And try and get through customs with that amount of money. It will never happen. They're going to detain you. They're going to bring you in a room and they're going to question you. Very, very difficult to transport it. Or let's say that you're in a country that there's war and you really want to get out and it's a dictatorship and it's hard to get out of that country. Try and take the gold, try and take your artwork, try and take your property, your real estate with you. It's not going to happen. Very challenging. With Bitcoin, you can simply store that information, whether it's on a USB card or you can remember your 24 password phrase, you can memorize the code and you can take $1 billion with you anywhere at any moment in time. So Bitcoin then wins in the portability standpoint. When it comes to divisibility, gold is divisible. Keep in mind that that's why gold coins were created. But over time, there's been some issues with that where they all of a sudden become fully gold to then gold plated. And they really mess with the money source and inflate it over time. But outside of that, when it comes to divisibility, people think, oh, well, one Bitcoin is $90,000 today. That's not very divisible. Well, within Bitcoin, each Bitcoin is made up of 100 million Satoshi. So go do the math. That's like 0.00001 cents today per Satoshi. So it's extremely divisible. That gets overlooked. Fungibility, each unit is interchangeable with a number. Absolutely the case with Bitcoin. One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. You can look it up on the ledger. It's there. So it absolutely fits the criteria for being money. Verifiability. When it comes to gold, there's fool's gold. You can wrap. You can have lead on the inside and then it can be gold on the outside, and that you can kind of fake it. With Bitcoin, it is verifiable by anybody. You can simply go on the ledger and you can take a look at it and confirm it instantaneously. It's right there. So it's more verifiable than gold. The other thing is when it comes to scarcity, gold is scarce and it does take energy to get it out of the earth. Now, here's the thing. Over the history of money, there's always adding about a 2% supply, historically on average, 2% supply to gold over a long period of time. Bitcoin wins in this category because there will only ever be 21 million, and that is one of the biggest factors going for Bitcoin. You cannot print more. You can find new gold reserves. You can go out there, you can do all that. But let's compare the dollar to Bitcoin. Well, guess what? They're printing it left and right. Literally, trillions of dollars. I mean, what, 40% of all the money in the world has been printed in the last 4 years? It's just absolutely insane. Guess how much money you can print? Now, you can mine. There's still a few, like maybe 1.5 million. I don't know. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. There's still a little bit of Bitcoin left to be mined. Most of it has been. But once you get to 21 million, it will never go up. So as more people buy it and hold it, a scarce asset, what happens? The price has to increase because it's inelastic. You can't get more, right? If the price of gold goes up, the cost of going out and mining more gold makes more sense. So miners are going to go out there and do it because they can make more profit. Not the case with Bitcoin. There will only ever be 21 million, and that solves a lot of the problems when it comes to the economy. For example, Bitcoin will help reduce wars. Hear me out on this one. In war, if you can print as much money as you want, therefore, you print money to fund a war and keep it going, right? The flip side of that is if you had to fund money with Bitcoin, it's once you spend it, you can't print more. So why would you do that? You're going to go, I'm going to give up my Bitcoin to fight a war that I don't care about. It's 2 other countries or whatever the situation is. It's going to reduce war and it's going to make it more peaceful because people are going to be more mindful. The same thing is if you had to raise taxes to fight a war, a lot of people are like, I'm not going to give you my taxes to go fight a war I don't believe in. What they would do now is they just print money and they just keep these wars, so it's actually creating a lot less peace in the world because they can just print this left and right, okay? That was a little tangent, but there are positives in having 21 million and scarcity in your money. You want that to be the case because, for example, how much has a house cost over the last 4 years, right? Let's say the average house, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's say the average house costs $325,000 in America 4 years ago. Now, let's say it's $425,000. It has gone up. If you look at Bitcoin, it was probably 60, 70 Bitcoin 4 years ago. Well, I shouldn't say that, but 20. And now it's like 3 Bitcoin. Double check me on that, but you get where I'm going with this, is that it actually is costing you less and less because Bitcoin is holding its power longer because you just can't keep printing it. The other one is acceptability, and this is where Bitcoin fails against gold and the US dollar. I get that, but it is becoming more and more commonplace. So Bitcoin is the most durable. It is by far, durability, I could say it might be even. Portability, it is by far way more portable than anything else. Divisible, extremely divisible, arguably more than gold. Fungibility, that's probably the same across the board. Verifiability, you can fake a lot of different currencies. It's a lot harder to fake Bitcoin, so it wins in that category. Scarcity, 100%, no questions asked. It is the scarcest asset relative to all the other stores of value or medium of exchanges. And then acceptability is where it loses, but it's gaining that momentum. So it is hard money and it is the proper money. If you had to recreate money from the beginning, something all of us use every single day, if you were to draw it up on paper, you would draw something up with the most properties that fit those 7 categories, which Bitcoin does, other than acceptability, and it's gaining in that. So it is the right decision when it comes to that. Now, when we look at the history of money itself and currencies, 100% of all currencies have been debased and have gone to zero over a long enough period of time. All of them. The Roman denarius debased over time from nearly pure silver, and then they became silver coating, down to less than 2%. Okay, it led to the inflation and lost the trust in the currency. Okay, The German Weimar, okay? Hyperinflation, bread costs like $1 billion, right? Zimbabwe, hyperinflation peaked, and they had a $100 trillion banknote. In Africa, they used to use glass beads as currency, and guess what? When the Europeans came over, they realized that this was the currency, and so they would produce that in Europe, bring it over, and exchange it. Well, because it didn't cost them much money to produce, they inflated the money, and that went completely awry and was a complete mess. This is happening over and over and over again. It doesn't feel like it can happen in the United States because the dollar has been so strong for 200 years, but it's happening. We're printing billions and billions of dollars and debasing our money. Everything is costing more, and I don't see it stopping. So as they print more money, guess what? Assets will go up in price, and you want to be in the most volatile asset because eggs might go up by 50 cents or $1, right? Housing is going to go up by hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes, or tens of thousands. What can increase in price the fastest? Something like Bitcoin, so you can actually get the greatest increase in your wealth by going into that. Volatility is not a bad thing. There's a difference between volatility and risk, and I would argue that there's a lot of risk in investing in things that can be debased, right? All right. So with that, that's a high level of overview of Bitcoin as and here's the thing. Bitcoin doesn't have to become the medium of exchange. It doesn't have to become money to be valuable. There's stores of value, right? Real estate is a store of value. People will take their money, their dollars, which is decreasing in price, and go buy a rental property or real estate, which increases in value. We're not trading and using a part of a house. Give me the window of the second floor window as payment for. No, you don't do that, right? It's not how this works. But it is a store of value. So I'm not arguing that Bitcoin ever has to become money in a medium of exchange like the US dollar, but it absolutely has a tremendous amount of value as a store of value. And all money goes through these cycles. So it starts off as a collectible, something of interest, and obviously Bitcoin was like, right? There's nerds and people, super smart people that were into computers and stuff. It was fun and enjoyable, right? It starts off as that collectible, eventually becomes a medium or a store of value. Once there's enough people that are on board with using that resource, it becomes a medium of exchange where you can barter and trade back and forth. And then finally becomes a unit of measure, meaning we denominate the cost of goods in the US dollar, for example, okay? I'm not saying Bitcoin has to get all the way to being a medium of exchange. I mean, it kind of is today in some ways. You can pay for things in it. Is it going to be the unit of measure where everything's priced in Bitcoin? I don't know, but it absolutely could be if the dollar continues to get debased and we do not smart things with it. So at a high level, there's one way to look at Bitcoin is that it's a technology. Absolutely, just like driving a car. I don't know how a combustion engine works, but I believe in the technology and that it operates. I started to study Bitcoin from the technology standpoint, and that's where I made the mistake because I came to the realization that yes, this is a legitimate technology. It has a very specific use case, but it is a legitimate technology. It is disruptive and it's here to stay. The problem I made is at the time there was 2,000 different coins out there, a lot of them pushing the blockchain. And I said, the technology of blockchain is legit, but I don't know which of the 2,000 of these coins to go with. It's just a guess. If I would have started by studying the history of money, that would have clearly, that's what made this all click for me, is once I understood the history of money and that all money eventually gets debased because it's not a limited supply and it'll eventually go to zero and there's hyperinflation, which is very scary. Then it's when it's clicked for me and said, this is hard money. Again, money can become a unit of measure, but it doesn't always. It can be a store of value, which is what I'm arguing Bitcoin is today. It's a way to put your money in and then see it increase in value over time. When you study Bitcoin, look at it from the lens of what is, if I had a blank slate and figured out what would be the best money, would I want the government be able to own it and print as much as they want, or would I want it to be decentralized and a limited supply? And if you look at it from that lens, I think Bitcoin starts to click a lot faster and quicker for people because everybody says, I don't get it, I don't understand it. Study it from the history of money to start and then continue to go down the rabbit hole. Speaking of which, I'll likely make more videos about Bitcoin and how do you further educate yourself? How do you buy it? How do you store it safely and securely? Why would I invest in it now? All those different topics. This has already been about 20 minutes. Happy to get into those if people have interest, leave comments. All right, with that, like, subscribe, check it out, get the word out. Let me know what you would like to learn more about, and I'm happy to give some additional insights about Bitcoin and why it's such a great asset.